a final response and a reading list for teens passionate about learning. I'm also going to answer this where the commenter posted. I haven't seen in which thread yet, since I clicked from the comments page. However, this deserved its own post. To my readers, I promise it's the last. I'm sure like me you find this grows tedious. Particularly the talking to a wall aspect. But hey, this one gets a reading list. Dear Anon, because your comment is moderately literate and at least superficially polite, I have unscreened it. I am, however, going to analyze it. And in future, I will answer no more anonymous posts. You want to discuss things with me, sign it. Caleb did and I didn't bite him. First and foremost, I have read your entire blog and understand your argument. You read all of it. Really? Including the WYSIWYG saga. Why? If you understand my argument, then why are you defending a teacher who was never under attack? I snarked about her annoying characteristics. It might surprise you to know she's human and that she can be mocked. I will later be posting a reading list for your class. For now, consider reading The Name of the Rose by Umberto Eco, possibly the only Nobel Prize winner in my conscious life that deserves reading. The final point of theology on which the solution to the mystery hinges is relevant to this attitude. And don't watch the movie. It has nothing to do with the book. It is true that culture does not equal genetics. I agree with this notion and realize that the point of your blog was not to patronize or attack the teacher. Indeed. First, I'm glad you agree with the notion, which is as much a notion as gravity is a notion. Psychologists and sociologists throughout the world rejoice. As for patronizing and attacking the teacher, do you mean the teacher who was never named in the school that was never named? It might interest you to know I know 4 IB teachers who are once published poets. It might also interest you to know there are 2 IB programs in this city, and about 6 in the rest of Colorado. Oh, and though this might be a bit over your head, not only is there another Robert Hoyt in Colorado, but he's an IB in a totally different city. Same year as Robert. How do I know this? Because his parents used to live in town and, by coincidence, his parents have the same name my husband and I do. This is borderline freaky, and yet true. Hoyt is a common name in Colorado. Google Hoyt, Colorado. It's a city. Founded by Hoyts. Not only was the teacher non-named, she was unidentifiable to anyone but those who already knew her. And then only because she's the only person I have ever heard of afflicted by pronoun aphobia. If I wanted to attack her, I could do what I almost did last December when I was taking some clothes into my son's room and saw a graded paper on his desk. I could post his answers and her comments. Trust me, I'm a teacher. I was trained for and taught gifted and talented. Her comments were much like the posters who called me names, only without the profanity. Posting this would destroy whatever reputation she still has, and, in case you wonder, I can be incredibly snarky with material like that. I could make such a comment and critique an overnight blog sensation, linked by major sites interested in education. Why didn't I do it? She's young. There is hope she will learn. There is hope she will grow up. She might be redeemable. Although for reasons I'll mention below I'm starting to doubt it, and continued harping on how she shouldn't be criticized will tempt my worst angels. However, my primary concern lies in the fact that, in my view, you did, in some cases, criticize our teacher. And this is a bad thing, because, considering I criticize her without naming her, this affects her you, because, if you read my entire blog you read the posters who are teachers, and who mention good teachers establish blogs where people can criticize them. If this shocks you, again, you shouldn't be so subservient to any authority. That is the mentality of a serf, not a leader. And might I add, I am shocked that the IB program, which is supposed to foster critical thinking, is producing so many people shocked someone might consider their teacher less than perfect. Look, my best teachers, my greatest professors, those who are authorities in their field, fell short of perfect. And I wouldn't have been shocked if a parent took issue with their stranger notions. If you think your teacher doesn't have strange notions, consider that article phobia is no part of anyone's theory of writing or style. Unclear antecedents for pronouns are a problem. Pronouns by themselves are just a part of the language and very useful. Trust me, I have complained about my fair share of assignments that I found inappropriate or unnecessary. And this attempt at empathy falls short of the point I've made how many dozen times now that the assignment was not just inappropriate or unnecessary. I class most of what my kids do in school as button counting. If I blogged about those, I would do nothing else. This assignment was pernicious and detrimental to the students' worldview and their critical thinking skills. Okay, thought experiment. Let's say 10 years from now, you're married, with a child. Your child comes home and tells you, we're supposed to do an assignment on how all insert race here are lazy and stupid. Regardless of what you thought or didn't think of the teacher, how would you react? As far as I was concerned, this is the mentality that assignment fosters. And whether the assignment was your cultural ancestry or not, again, that's how most people understood it, which leads me to believe there was something in how it was phrased. The further reason to believe this is that I've lived with my son for 16 years. He's not infallible. He can be a right royal pain in the backside. However, he's an IB student. You tell me how often you guys misunderstand 4-point assignments. There are IB jokes on this subject. However, there is a difference between a bad assignment and a bad teacher. Yes. Granted, a lot of these assignments come from above. Note that to the extent I criticize your teacher, it was for other things. Note also that those were light, glancing blows. I could do much worse. Note that I didn't identify her or even give many of her defining characteristics. I could have. There is also a difference between complaining about a teacher in the privacy of your home or with the teacher themselves, and complaining about a teacher in a public forum. Yes, there is a difference. When I complain in a public forum, I make my peers and other parents aware of the sad state of education, even for the very gifted. Your point is, if I had named her and said Miss So-and-so is a bad teacher, it would still be valid. It would still be within my rights. My taxes pay for the teacher. She is a public employee. In case your in-depth reading of my blog missed this, I grew up under a socialist regime. The idea that you should only criticize authorities in private is very well known to me. And repulsive. Private criticism makes it impossible for people to realize others are facing the same problem. I assign you to read the Gulag Archipelago, which I first read in a photocopy, clandestinely passed around my 9th grade class. It wasn't forbidden as such, but it was frowned upon. As in, this would definitely be reflected on your grades and affect your chances at college. Hence, photocopies and brown paper covers. With that said, I wish to formally apologize for my clismatis improper comments. I assure you that they meant no harm. Improper. I'd say improper, illiterate and illogical. I'd also be ashamed to be associated with them in any way, shape or form. As for no harm, consider this, although I stray into my personal life now and then, because a lot of the fans' friends who read this have an interest, or because the anecdote illustrates a larger point, as this one did, this blog is attached to my professional image. Although I'm fairly sure the circus here in the last couple of days has not heard it, it's also not even remotely related to writing, except as far as you and your classmates have provided bad examples of it. I've also lost 2 days of my work under an avalanche of what amounts to a cyber attack. Contrary to the idea that I write for my ego or derive superiority from it, an idea that would be at best hilarious to anyone in this field, our experiences mostly resemble an unending series of kicks in the teeth, except for the very lucky few. This is my job. I get paid for it. My monetary contribution is necessary to this household. Imagine a thought experiment again, that your classmates decided something your father said months ago, without identifying the teacher school he referred to, was morally injurious to the honor standing of a teacher who is very popular with the class. Something that has nothing to do with being a good teacher, BTW. In fact, it's often proof one is not a good teacher, whatever the 60s generation believed. They decide to go to where he works and stand in his office screaming at him. He tries to ignore them, but every 5 minutes, another one screams. So he starts answering them, and all of them, even the polite ones, keep repeating the same things he already disproved, until it's obvious they don't want to listen. They just want to yell at him for this bad thing he did, which no one would have noticed till they called attention to it. Would you see it as their having done him no harm? Now suppose because of this your father will have to spend the weekend working to make up time lost. Suppose you had a family trip planned. Both of these apply in this case. Would this be no harm? Again, critical thinking skills and evaluation of consequences are missing here. To defend your teacher, in a blog that's not primarily about education, in a post in which she was never named nor her school identified, you flock to interfere with someone's performance of her job. Yep, seems like the teacher is doing a fine job of teaching you empathy, which is at least part of analyzing literature and logical thinking. All I ask is that you understand where we are coming from. I do understand where you're coming from. Oh, I do. You're coming from a cult of personality, where your teacher's self-esteem, she is of that generation, poor thing, is so important, she can't stand the idea that anyone, anywhere can refrain from agreeing with her, or could possibly think her less than stellar. This attitude, explicit or not, has communicated itself to her students. I personally feel as though our English teacher is one of the best educators I have ever encountered in my 12 years of public schooling. My sentiments. This goes to the heart of why more parents should blog about the state of our education and the senseless, counterproductive things that teachers do, or their lack of preparation to teach. Since ours is a national education system, this is a matter of national concern. I know we're all very busy, but we'll just have to keep a closer eye on teachers from now on. Also, and for the record, your feelings are never proof of anything. She not only taught me the importance of literature, she has also inspired me as a student and learner. Really? Do you know, in one of my final tests in college, the question was as follows: what is the difference between literature and real life? This was the question upon which my graduating from theory of literature hinged. I answered by comparing literature to Plato's cave. What you think you see in real life is actually the projected images in the cave. Literature is the only way you can see the real thing. Though it is not my job to teach you the importance of literature, and though doing so would take far longer than I have, let me give you a quick look-see. Reality is chaotic. The human brain is a mechanism for ordering reality. Literature is the only thing that gives us the ability to see into others' minds and see how they order reality. For this reason, it is very important. Other reasons too. We'll leave alone the fact that I know what you've been reading, and most of it falls under more trendy than any definition of literature that will stand the test of time. You could get the same very flawed points by reading Marx's books. We'll even leave aside the fact I've read or graded tests if your teacher has managed to communicate to the class that different brains process reality in different ways, that we're all prisoners of our time-age class, except for the ability to experience someone else's mind in a book. Movies don't do it. They're externalized. None of the commenters so far showed it. No, not even you. Also, the reading comprehension on display and the constant resurgence of things that I or my posters have disposed of. You should never criticize a teacher personally. Being one of those tells me your ability to analyze information is less than stellar. If she's not teaching you to extract meaning from text, what is she doing? The needless, sweeping, palpably inaccurate statements such as "I've read your entire blog" and repetitive phrasing as a student and a learner betray a sad lack of understanding of how to express yourself in writing. Let me add, cold comfort though it is, that so far you're the best I've seen of your teacher's handiwork. You are condemning her in a way I never wanted to and could never manage on my own. Reminds me of a poem by Rainer Kunz on the celebrations on Lenin's anniversary. Even if he wanted to be remembered this way, it would be an insult. On a personal note, Robert Doe's right. Professionally. Since we're not a wealthy family, whatever you've heard about what writers make is so wrong. This is part of how he intends to finance his education. I've hesitated to even mention this, but your teacher with her insane obsessions with pronouns and barring the word show because, and this is a direct quote, ladies and gentlemen who normally read this blog, I see words as little images, and show is a little man who comes out and flashes you. Yes, she teaches 11th grade to a supposedly gifted program. Not, as it might sound, 2nd grade, and whatever else Robert hasn't gotten around to mentioning. Most of her comments on Robert's papers could be effectively countered with sounds like a personal problem to me. Has ruined Robert's style and voice. I could simply type in his essays from the end of last year and his essays now, when he engages in verbal contortions to avoid triggering the teacher's phobias. That too would be sufficient indictment of her and her teaching methods. And before you say you shouldn't allow a teacher to do that. True. But he's with her almost every day. I've seen editors and agents do this to professionals. He doesn't have enough experience to avoid it's being done to him. Nor should he have to. Oh, mind you, it will pass. But she has cost him probably already a couple of novel sales, because his revision of the novel requested by the editor is on hold till he's out from under this teacher's influence. It is teachers like her that make me passionate about learning. Learning what exactly? Being passionate about generic learning is not a virtue, whatever they taught you in your school. I could spend the rest of my life learning the fine art of gilding dog poop. Would that be a valuable skill? Is all learning equal? What if I were passionate about it? Do feelings trump logic? Let me see what you and your classmates have demonstrated you've learned in this blog in the last day, that those in authority cannot be dissed by a mere parent. That anyone who does so, no matter how obliquely, deserves a full frontal attack and a reality check. That the use of profanity is the clincher in an argument. That teachers are superhuman beings and like the devil should never be mocked. Or simply that literature is important. That you are both a student and a learner. That you have the capacity for empathy of a small rock. That you are completely and thoroughly devoid of the burden of any knowledge of philosophy, history, logic, language, and as I'll prove below, statistics. I realize most of this is not an English teacher's fault. You've been failed by a much larger system. Still, she never taught you the importance of clear and specific writing, never made it possible for you to make a point in a readable and pleasant manner. Also, she hasn't encouraged critical thinking skills, which I believe are part of admission. And she hasn't taught you reading comprehension. Yes, I can get all this from yours and your classmates. You could too, if you had been taught to analyze text. However, on the off chance she made you passionate about learning something, I assign you to reading Stephen King's On Writing, Strunk and White Elements of Style, Rennie Brown and Dave King's Self-Editing for Fiction Writers, James Kilpatrick's The Writer's Art. Finally, I wish to clarify that our English teacher made no mention of your blog. Very interesting that you need to mention this. I am then left to assume that, as my colleague Kate Polk pointed out, your teacher is at least very efficient in teaching mind reading, since all of the posters harp on the fact I haven't talked to met the teacher. How do you know that? This post is 6 months old. I haven't mentioned the teacher again. How do you know I haven't talked to her? Well, tell me. I'd love to know. BTW, I've avoided mentioning her all these months because she's not that important to me, whatever the gravitational position she holds in her student's life, not for lack of temptation. By the way, just as in Fee, that temptation is looking sweeter by the minute. In fact, the song One Step Over the Line, Sweet Jesus, One Step Over the Line has been running through my head. I am eager for that step to be taken, because since yesterday I've found I do have so much to say about this teacher specifically, with school mentioned, and city, and program, and the teacher's name. More importantly, you know, I do have her graded papers. Well, Robert does, but he's at school. And I'm home. And I know where he keeps his stuff. I could just post those with my responses to her comments. That would be fun, wouldn't it? Well, for me and my regular readers. Or how about I dig through my mailbox where the now deleted anonymous comments are stored, and illustrate her pedagogical art in her studentstellar words. Coming one step over the line, sweet Jesus. Let me add that all of you seem to labor under the impression that I am either fair or nice. Even the little girl who called me a bitch was under the impression the word would shock me. This is often a tactic used on middle-aged women by aggressive youngsters. But, you see, I lived through rougher times than you can imagine. My confrontational experiences have included people pointing machine guns at me. They didn't shut me up, so bitch and guilt trips over dissing a teacher in a public forum are likely to fail as well. Actually, because I'm of a contrarian disposition, it will push me the other way. As you will learn, and it is a valuable experience, perhaps the most valuable in your life, things don't always go exactly according to plan. Google law of unintended consequences for your further enlightenment. I have tried to be fair. And in deference for the fact that both you posters and your teacher, if indeed there is a difference at least as shown in your comments, are emotionally younger than my 13-year-old who is very young indeed, I've held my fire. But this is very rapidly reaching the point where I take off the gloves. Trust me, this is something none of you wants. And it's not a threat. It's a promise. You're a little old for this movie, but I'm sure you've heard Make My Day. Do, please. We are all self-motivated students who independently replied to you. Okay, this one has me puzzled. Are you in the advanced math program? Because so far, I believe that teacher to be competent. Sometimes a little strange, but competent. However, if you are in the advanced math program, I will have to revise this opinion. Consider this: the post did not mention your school and your teacher by name. I can perfectly understand the wish to Google schools, teachers. Writers Google agents and editors all the time. However, a Google for your school name and teacher would not bring this up. So, let's say the idea that Robert's mom writes has gotten around, and that all of you decided to look at my blog at the same time. In this incredibly compressed period of time. First, it's not that fascinating, and I know blog reading behavior. You read one page, maybe two. Snicker at the idea that to me Robert is a child. A Kafin. If, and considering how far back you have to go, this is unlikely you find that post, you might drop a casual "hey, the teacher is okay, and the assignment wasn't that." At normal rate of responses, I would get maybe one of these a month for the next 2 years. But why did all of you at the same time not, a trickle over weeks, months, but in the space of now 30-some hours post independently to the same 6 months old post? And how do you all manage to misinterpret the post in exactly the same way, and bring up the exact same points? I'm not the mathematician in the house. My husband is. I'm sure you can give me a seat of the pants estimate on the probability or even possibility that you're all posting independently. However, even without being a mathematician, I can safely say it is far lower than the possibility that a coin, when thrown, will fall neither on one side nor on edge, but will remain suspended mid-air. I'm sorry, I don't believe in magic. I only write it as fiction. In a court of law, the messages of the last day are prima facie evidence of a conspiracy to harass. No jury would buy that independent thing. To avoid this type of embarrassment in the future, I recommend reading The Cartoon Guide to Statistics by Larry Gonick. It will serve you well in life. Oh, and it's funny too. It may be our hormones that are telling us to write these posts. What is this? The Son of Sam defense. If your hormones are in any way concerned with your English teacher, someone at the school should look into it ASAP. One step over the line, sweet Jesus. And if you believe your hormones actually talk to you, hie thee with all speed to either the detox center or the psychiatrist. If what you meant without sounding deranged is that the emotional turmoil of adolescence might be responsible for these posts, let me just say no. Lack of understanding of the world and self-control, plus the unhealthy atmosphere your teacher has clearly fostered, plus the antics of a school system devoted to the deification of teachers as you were mentioned has caused you to write this. As weird as this is, adults have hormones too. In a court of law, my hormones made me do it is no more a defense than, but the dog told me to cut up the neighbors and put their pieces in a trash bag. No, wait. I correct myself. There is no way to express what you tried to say without sounding insane. I assign you to read Red Planet and Podkane of Mars for a better understanding of the concept of individual responsibility, which seems to have completely evaded you. But regardless, the sheer number of positive responses for our teacher demonstrates the impact she has had on all of our lives. Yes, indeed it does. However, to quote my friend Kate, impact can be either good or bad, and in this case, I would say it is uniformly bad just from what I see in my blog. I will not be so unkind as to make fun of your typo. I'm the queen of typos, that's why I have copy editors. However, there is a psychological school that believes the typos reveal the deeper works of the subconscious, and often try to sound the alarm about a behavior that we are not consciously aware of. Your typo made me think of sheep, which is what you and your classmates have shown yourselves to be on this blog. Quickly, let me disabuse of some notions. A popular teacher is not necessarily a good teacher. I'm sure my posters who were in school in the 60s can provide plenty of examples. A good way to get students' adoration is to give them power over adults and to encourage them to think that the adults are in awe scared of you. As a general guideline, any teacher who comes into the classroom and starts off with "I'm sure you'll teach me more than I'll teach you" is a bad teacher. They're trying to get your buy-in on their personality, not their competence. Now, I don't know if your teacher has done this, but I would bet she did. Well, give it a little leeway. Some teachers say this because they think they have to. Observe them. If they mean it, they are no good. Another line is "you are the best educated, brightest etc. generation." It's hooey. Every generation has believed this of itself. If they say it without irony, they're trying to put one over on you. Your teacher is supposed to command your respect for concrete achievements, not your love for her being a friend. The other is a Hollywood fairy tale. Good teachers live on after death, and their written words influence generations yet unborn. This is not a function of being the most caring person ever. It's a function of having something to teach and communicating it effectively. Beyond this, the fact you all rushed to defend her, even though she hadn't been attacked, betrays a form of insanity usually found in cults. Please, for your own sake and the sake of your future, read Seductive Poison, a Jonestown Survivor's story by Deborah Layton. Also, because one of the ways adults use to gain power over teens and convince them that the adult is special and important and must be defended, read about the Cultural Revolution. A good i.e., not official coming from a dictatorship. Yes, China is still a dictatorship. Biography of Mao will help. Read biographies of people who survived the Cultural Revolution, too. It might give you some insight into the processes of being loved and how illegitimate they can be when foisted by a figure of authority from above. I have one of those bios, but I can't find it now. It's in the library and I haven't had time to reshelve in some weeks. Since I've given most of the reading list already, you might wish to read Kicking the Sacred Cow by James P. Hogan, which, if read and absorbed, even if you don't agree with everything he says, will give you a little more understanding into the world and how authority works. And for the love of heaven, stop sipping that Kool-Aid. If you like this content and want to support this channel, the blog, and Sarah's continued writing, please like and subscribe. If you really enjoy the content, please come and join the fun at accordingtohoyt.com.